Sure. What's up, guys? Nick Borrman here of WagerTalk.com, back with another episode of Tea Time from Vegas. This time we are looking at the fifth major of the year, the Players Championship. Of course, I have with me my co-host, Andy Lang, fresh haircut and all. Andy, my friend, how are you doing?
Doing great. Coming off of a 4-1 week, we cashed our best bet. That's 2 in a row, and this is such a fun tournament, a completely loaded field. I do get annoyed that they call it like the fifth major, and it's like, well, if there's only 4 majors, how can this be the fifth major? Like that, I don't know. Either make it a major or don't make it a major. Just say this is a really awesome tournament. That's always kind of bugged me about it, but we have a really, really interesting tournament. Weather, big factor. I'm sure we're going to get into that. So, but looking forward to it. When you get a loaded field like that, the books always give us a lot of extra bets, and that means extra room for profit. So, should be a great week.
I'm guessing you hate that guy that says I'm in 110% or giving 110% too, right? You don't like that guy either?
Yeah, like how Draftkings has a 50-50 tournaments, and they only pay out 40 out of 100 people, so it's a 60-40. So yes, the math needs to add up for me.
All right, well, the Players is here. Not a major, but an awesome tournament for sure. Before we get going into today's show, I always want to start off with a great promo for this week's tournament. Players 20 is the promo code for this week. You can grab $20 off Andy or myself's tournament package. Normally priced at $39, grab for just $19. Players 20 is that promo code. So head over at WagerTalk.com to either one of our pages to check that out. Of course, that's all 4 days of action, matchups, outrights, leaderboards, any props from DraftKings or FanDuels will be in there as well. So definitely a great deal this week. As always, let's start off this week's show talking a quick bit about last week. Boy, what a tournament that was, and it was a difficult finish. Looked like a U.S. Open for sure out there. So let's talk about our worst bets, of course, and our best bets from the week. Andy, we'll start with you. What was your best? What was your worst from Bay Hill?
Well, I had a really good one, a good week. Like I said, 4-1. My play of the week was the same as yours. I'll let you take that one. But Victor Hovland, top Scandinavian, was talk about a no sweat. He was up at the top of the leaderboard, and the other 3 people with him, Stenson, Norlander, and Hogard, all missed the cut. So that was, we talked about it was minus 200, but this falls into my juicy plays where if you have a minus 200 play and it wins easily, then it's a bargain. So that was my favorite bet. That was a no sweat. And then the play I lost, I had Kokrak over Sam Burns. I was kind of planning on a Sam Burns collapse as he's done the last 3 tournaments. Credit to him. He didn't. He didn't collapse. He actually played really well. He actually showed the potential that I think we all expected from him coming into the year. So I caught him on a bad week to fade. So that was my worst bet.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think Stenson actually played pretty well on Thursday, or maybe it was just like the first couple holes. At one point, I saw him on the leaderboard.
He was
and
3 under.
Okay.
He was 3 under, and then all of a sudden he was 2 over.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. Classic. I too was also on Kokrak over Burns. I gave that out last week's show, so I feel your pain on that one. My best bet was my 5% play, the only one I've released so far at WagerTalk on golf this year, which was Rory to finish top 20. He was inside the top 20 the entire week. Obviously, he was the first round leader, and then only went backwards from there. At one point Sunday, I'm texting Andy going, I can't believe I'm sweating this damn thing, because he fell down to a tie for 20th, then steadied the storm. I forget what day it was. He had a 4-putt from 4 feet. I don't know, it was like
classic,
I just felt like
classic 4th round putting Rory. Classic Rory.
I felt the collapse was coming. Thankfully, he righted the ship and finished inside that top 20. Worst bet of the week, Gary Woodland to miss the cut, almost won the damn thing. So there you go. He's really turned it on the last few weeks, and deservingly so. I thought plus 225 was a decent price on him, and he proved me dead wrong. So sorry, Gary Woodland. I will not fade you again this week. All right, let's move on to the Players Championship. We will look at the strokes gained numbers here for the tournament heading in. We have 2 lists to look at. We have strokes gained tee to green and strokes gained, or total strokes gained. Scheffler last week was once again in the top 10 list heading into the week, which is now 6 of 9 winners so far in 2022 that have come from the top 10 on one of these lists. So we'll look at tee to green first. You got Justin Thomas leading the way, Berger, Luke List, who has already won this year, Rahm, Zalatoris, Schauffele, McIlroy, Henley, Morikawa, and Neiman. But then you got a couple of names missing from the tee to green list, which would include, if you look at the other side, Cantley, Cam Smith. So tee to green is basically everything but putting. So putting is always, you get what's the old saying, drive for show, putt for dough. So you're not going to win without putting, but tee to green is a great metric to look at because guys can have bad putting weeks, guys can have good putting weeks, but if you're not getting the ball to the green at any given time, you're really not going to have yourself any sort of chance. So as I said, on the total strokes gain, you got Cantley leading the way, and then that's a pretty stacked board. I mean, everybody that you would expect is right here. JT, Cam Smith, Morikawa, Scheffler, of course, winning 2 of the last 3. He starts Berger, McIlroy, Hovland, Sung Jae, and John Rahm rounding out that list. So very solid. I would highly suspect, with conditions being as difficult as they're going to be, which we'll get into in a second, this week, that one of the winners probably coming from one of these lists. But as the Players has proven in the past, there are some long shots that have won here. I just don't know if that'll be the case with the weather. So, Andy, let's talk a little bit about the tournament this week. We'll talk about the field, the weather, of course, if you want, and anything about the course. Let's start with you.
Well, this is just you got to be just a well-rounded golfer, and you got to nail it on all fronts. There isn't one stat that jumps out as it's like, oh, this is a ball striker's course, or, oh, you got to be able to putt. No golfer has finished top 20 in the last 3 tournaments in a row here. So just a couple of examples here. Rory has finished miscut, win, miscut. John Rahm, 9th, 12th, 63rd. Justin Thomas, win, 35th. Patrick Cantlay, miscut, 23rd. So you're going to get to see a lot of surprises. I think this is a really difficult top 10s are going to be difficult to play this week. I'm going to be nowhere near top 10s. I think you're going to see a lot of movement and a lot of shifting upon the weather. And I think if you're going to play some positions, I think you need to really stretch it out. You need to be looking at top 20s, 30s, and 40s. I think it's just going to be too hard, especially with the odds and the stacked field, to play a top 10. The weather, this is going to be tricky because it's going to be rainy, it's going to be windy, and you never know when they're going to blow that horn. And it could possibly throw the tournament, into disarray. We saw it with Shane Lowry, where the rain comes at the worst possible time.
Oh yeah,
for him. So, and we saw it with Hideki Matsuyama when he won the Masters. I mean, he played great, but let's face it, he got the best possible scenario when the weather delay came, and he got to come out to the most beautiful conditions where everyone else had to play in the muck. So with a loaded field, I think this can trip some people up this week. So even though there's a ton of bets available, I'm not going to be having a lot more than usual. I'm going to tread a little bit lightly. I've got 4 right now that I'm pretty solid on. So be patient, be careful. And I do think there could be some value on dailies depending on the weather and the draw, and if we have some weather delays.
Yeah, the wind and the rain are definitely going to be the story, I guess you could say, as we go into this tournament. Obviously, the wind was a huge factor last week. We saw how difficult Bay Hill ended up playing, especially over that weekend. This week looks very similar. You have maybe Thursday being the least impacted day, but it's going to quickly turn into rain and wind, and then it gets cold. I think it's like only high in the mid-50s come Sunday. So you're right. There could be delays. We may not even finish this tournament by the end of Sunday. Who knows? So it'll be a lot on the players to adjust on the fly and go. As the weather, I'm going to look at the weather. I haven't looked at the timing of it yet to see if perhaps, maybe it's a worst. Maybe there's a reason to take, the Thursday morning, Friday afternoon, or the Thursday afternoon, Friday morning tee time split. Sometimes with the weather, you get a little bit of an advantage based on that. So depending on when the wind and the rain is really coming in on Thursday, Friday, I think it's worth looking at the splits for tee times this week. I haven't done so myself, so I don't have anything to add to that, but other than I will be looking at it. Sawgrass, I mean, one of the golf meccas in the world. It's the course, so many non-touring professionals want to play, and of course, if they do, they're going to tell you the story of what they did on 17. You talked about the history here. There's not really a horse for course play here. I mean, you got Rory is a great example. Miscut, win, miscut. You hit that on the head. I mean, even Tiger here, he's won twice, but he's struggled here more than a lot of courses. So it's not a course that there's just somebody that's like, wow, this guy's going to plays well here year in and year out. 48, I believe it's now 47 of the top 50 players in the world will be in the field. And Kevin Na dropped out. And then you got Mickelson, DeChambeau, and Harris English as the only guys not teeing it up. So easily the best field of the year. And again, this is going to come down to the weather and down to who can beat through that wind. So let's get into our segments here. Talk a little bit about outright plays. I'll start there, and then we'll go to Andy. Outrights, I mentioned before, I think one of the favorites is probably going to be the guy that comes through this week. So I'm not going to be looking too far down the odds list. If I'm looking down there, I may play something, as Andy mentioned, on a top 20, 30, or 40 type of a list, but I'm going to stick with the top of the list for the outrights this week, which I'll start with Morikawa. Right now, he's at 16-1. He has just one start at Sawgrass, tied for 41st last year. But as I mentioned before, I don't think course history matters too much here, although he did shoot a 66 on Sunday, so perhaps just a couple days of figuring it out could do him in and have some good confidence coming in this week. Since the Tour Championship, Morikawa has played in 8 events with 6 top 10s, including a win at the DP World Tour Championship. He roared up the leaderboard on the weekend in his last start, too, finishing tied for second at the Genesis, so playing well. His ball striking, as good as it gets on tour. He ranks number 8 strokes gained off the tee, number 4 approach, plus number 4 in putting, which puts him as the number 1 player in total strokes gained so far this season. First in scoring average, second in greens and regulation, 12th in driving accuracy, yet he hasn't won on the PGA Tour yet this calendar year. So I feel like, people really aren't thinking about him, but obviously at 16-1, it's not like he's completely forgotten about. But I think as to start the outrights, I think you got to look at Morikawa just for how consistent he's been. And listen, ball striking is going to be important this week, purely because when you have wind, if you're just a little off, that wind can really exasperate things. So I like Morikawa this week as an outright play. Right now as a top 10, he's also about plus 180. Not a great value there, so I just stick with the outright play. Andy, I know you like to start with guys that you're avoiding, guys that can trip you up. So who are you looking at not taking this week?
I feel like I went 2-1 last week with guys that can trip you up. We talked about Sepp Straka. He missed the cut. He was awful. Russell Henley outperformed. I was wrong on him, but we'll get to the third one. Jon Rahm. I'm going to start with Dustin Johnson, though. His putting has been atrocious the last 2 tournaments in the United States. It was good over in Saudi Arabia, but minus 0.49 strokes gain putting and minus 0.39 strokes gain approach the last 3 months on tour. That is not going to get it done this week.
No.
And that's just, it's not going to have it. You're not going to have a chance. Weather conditions looking dicey. I also saw a lot of frustration from Dustin in the last tournament. And if he gets off to a slow start, this is easily a tournament where he can fall behind. He misses a few putts and he gets dejected. And you just can't do that with this loaded field. There's too many great golfers that can fly by you on the leaderboard. So I'm avoiding Dustin Johnson. This one's going to be fun. You and I are going to disagree a little bit about this one. I'm not going to get anywhere near Patrick Cantlay. He was putting lights out for 6 months. And last tournament, his putting kind of failed him a little bit. 45th in putting in that tournament. He only had 1 round where he was plus strokes gained in putting. He missed the cut the last 2 times he's played here, and I just wonder if maybe the putting is regressing back just a little bit to average. His price is a bit too high for me for daily fantasy in some of these matchups. And again, when we have a loaded field, I just think there's other options that I can go to. And my last guy, I said I don't want to play Jon Rahm. And listen, when you're the number 1 golfer in the world and you're the number 1 priced golfer on daily fantasy, and you're in head-to-heads at minus 180 or more, you need to be top 10 to have any value whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't. This is 2 tournaments in a row. He has not been top 10. He's finished 21st and 17th the last 2 weeks. That's not good enough. Last week, Rahm, he lost his head-to-head matchups against Rory and Hovland as a big favorite. And he's a favorite this week against, you mentioned Morikawa, Justin Thomas, Rory McIlroy. No way I put him into daily fantasy. He's overvalued at this point. I think he's struggling a little bit with putting, so he's a guy that can trip you up. He won't make my seasonal fantasy lineups as well. He's a no play for me this week.
I couldn't agree more with you on Rahm. I didn't have an outright play on Scheffler last week. The only money I had on him was a matchup play, plus 155 over Rahm. And
Nice.
You're right. I mean, Rahm he's a auto. I don't want to say he's an auto fade, but he's a guy I look at in matchups immediately when the lines come out, because I know he's going to be, like you said, laying big number, and you're going to get guys like Scheffler, like JT, the best in the world at plus decent, good prices. This week they've come down a little bit. Looks like the odds makers may be adjusting. I mean, JT's only plus 110, maybe plus 115, but still, until Rahm kind of gets back to his full groove, there's probably some decent value there. But I couldn't disagree more on Patrick Cantlay. And I'll start there. Listen, you mentioned his putting. I will say this, anybody can go in and just putt like shit one week or get red hot with that thing. And when I was in, I always tell people the story when I was in college, which was in Myrtle Beach. Half the courses we played were bent grass greens. Half the courses we played were Bermuda. I was awful on Bermuda. I just couldn't read him. I couldn't putt him. But you put me on bent grass, I'd put myself up against some of the best in the world. I swear I just had that much confidence on a bent grass green. But on Bermuda, I couldn't beat a 4-year-old. I was just terrible. So Cantlay, listen, maybe he just didn't like the greens in that last start. I think it was the Genesis. He didn't putt that great. Maybe it was just
Correct.
one of those things. Still, tee to green. I mean, he's very, very solid. And as long as he puts himself in that spot on the greens, I think he will have a good. So he is on my outright play list this week at 24-1. See, I think he's got a decent number compared to like who I mentioned before, Morikawa at 16-1. But I mean, listen, besides that 33, that tie for 33 at the Genesis, he had 3 straight grueling starts, and maybe that sucked a little energy out of him too. I mean, he had a chance to win all 3: the American Express, Pebble Beach, and the Phoenix Open, where he finished runner-up in the playoff. He could have won all those, and perhaps he just ran out of a little bit of steam. He finished tied for 4th at the Century Tournament Champions, and then go back to last year, won the Tour Championship, won the BMW Championship, finished tied for 11th at the Northern Trust in that FedEx Cup title run. So the guy's solid. I'm not betting. I'm not betting against him because I'm betting on him this week. His strength is off the tee. I think that's going to be a big factor this week to get yourself in play and have a chance to hit these greens. And putting he is one of the better putters out there. He had a bad week. I'm not putting too much on it. He's got the 4th best scoring average on tour. He does have 2 missed cuts in 4 starts here, so he doesn't have the best course history. But I will say he's never been as good as he is now. So I think Patrick Cantlay's got decent value this week. So listen, this is the beauty of the show. We're going to disagree sometimes, and this is one that we don't see eye to eye on it, and that is okay. Andy, let's go back to you. Let's talk your DraftKings darlings. Who are you put in your fantasy lineups this week?
Well, this is going to be a change in strategy. The last few tournaments where you have these top tiers and then a big drop off, we've gone with the stars and scrubs strategy. When you have a loaded field, this is middle tier guys. So in weeks past, you've heard me give out guys below 7,000. I'm going to give you some guys between 8,000 and 7,400. That's the way to approach a tournament like this with a loaded field. First, I'm going to start with Shane Lowry at 8,000. There's going to be wind and rain at a tournament. Paging Shane Lowry, wind and rain at a tournament. He thrives in this stuff, and I get him at 8,000. He's finished 2nd, 24th, and 12th in 2022, and he finished 8th here last year. I'll take it. That's a slam dunk for Shane Lowry at 8,000. Sergio Garcia, he's just priced great, 7,400. He's made the cut here 11 years in a row, finished 9th here last year, and he's finished 38th, 39th, and 12th in 2022. Not saying he's going to be top 10 or even top 20, but I'm saying the odds are he's going to get to the weekend and get you some points. If he was priced above 8,000, I would pass. But at 7,400, that opens up a lot of room for me. So Sergio Garcia at 7,400 is a bargain. And then Matthew Fitzpatrick at 7,700. My gosh.
Really?
All he's done is
Wow.
yes, 3 top 10 finishes in a row, and he finished 9th here last year. just shockingly undervalued this week, Matthew Fitzpatrick. So, Nick, I actually built a lineup earlier today with these three. So this is an example of how you can do these. So I'll start with Sergio Garcia, Matthew Fitzpatrick, and Shane Lowry. And then I can throw Billy Horschel in at 8,100, who's been playing great. I can throw Adam Scott, who's got a slew of made cuts in a row, and he's been playing good at 8,200. And that leaves me enough to throw Justin Thomas in at 10,400. So Justin Thomas, Adam Scott, Billy Horschel, Shane Lowry, Fitzpatrick, and Garcia. That's how I'm going to do daily fantasy this week. That's how I'm going to attack it.
That's a pretty solid lineup. I said there's not a lot of horse for the course plays, but Garcia and Scott were the only two that really came to mind, and you got them both in your lineup. So good choice there. I am all over Fitzpatrick as well. That'll be the last play I'll mention today is Fitzpatrick. Right now at DraftKings, you can do 3-ball matchups, so it's not just head-to-head. There's 3 players involved. Matthew Fitzpatrick is plus 160 to finish higher than Zalatoris and Garcia. Fitzy, he was rather ho-hum. I was on him last week to win. He finished, again, top 10, as you mentioned. He was rather ho-hum the first 2 days at Bay Hill, but he actually shot 1 stroke better on the weekend than he did on Thursday and Friday, and that's when of course, the weather really turns difficult. That was his 3rd straight top 10. You mentioned that over his last 5 starts. His worst finish is a tie for 12th. That's pretty solid. He ranks 4th in putting and number 2 in total strokes gained on tour so far this season. Zalatoris and Garcia, the worry I have is that as the weather got worse, they got worse. Zalatoris just blew up on Sunday. He shot 79, just plummeted down the leaderboard. Garcia, he finished 75, 74 over the weekend. So I'm not fully confident in either player just based on how they finished last week. And I just think Fitzpatrick, Zalatoris and Garcia both could still make the cut and play decent. And Fitzpatrick, I'm just high on enough that I think he beats them this week and is possibly up there in that top 10 area again. So I think plus 160 over those guys is a pretty decent play for a guy that's been playing damn well this week. So, Andy, let's head back to you one more time. Is there any other you want to talk about your best bet? Who are you looking at as far as a matchup this week for the viewers?
Yeah, we got a good one. This one is on DraftKings. By the way, oh my gosh, if you had Zalatoris in your top 20 bets, and I know one of my buddies did, that was a brutal Sunday to watch. Oh, it's really painful to watch it just do. All right, best bet. This is on DraftKings. Victor Hovland over Hideki Matsuyama. Hovland has just been incredible this season. His ceiling is about as high as it gets right now. I can't think of too many golfers that I would put a higher ceiling. Finished top 4 and 5 out of his last 7 tournaments, coming off a 2nd and 4th in his last 2. Matsuyama, listen, great season so far. He's been playing really well. Since the win, he's finished 30th, 8th, 39th, and 20th. Hovland is 3-1 head-to-head against Hideki in their last 4 matchups. Hovland's only played here once. That was last year, and he missed the cut. But guess what? Hideki missed the cut as well. So I like Hovland's form right now. I like these guys with the really, really high ceiling. And when I get Hovland, especially at minus 105 against Matsuyama, I'm going to fire away on that one.
Hovland, Morikawa, Scheffler, who cares how they played last year or the year before? I mean, there's such different players in the world. The last couple of years are so different, and they're so good and gotten so good so fast. So I love Hovland. I'm going to give him some money on him in some way. I haven't yet figured that out. I think this is a pretty good option here against Matsuyama. Matsuyama is I remember as we're talking about him as the guy that'll be forever remembered as the first-round leader of the Players' Championship. And then the tournament was canceled 2 years ago for COVID. So poor guy. Who knows what could have happened with him that year? But he does have decent history here at this event. But Hovland's he's just hotter. I mean, if Hovland's not in the top 10, I'd be very, very surprised. So I do like that play. Andy, you wanted to talk before we wrap up the show. You wanted to talk a little bit about some comments made on last week's event at Bay Hill. And that was about the course difficulty and the setup. And some players liked it. Some players were complaining. What's your thoughts on last week?
Well, so the background story is obviously the course played hard. The wind and the weather came in. Rory did not like it. He said, I don't think guys are going to play it anymore when it's set up this hard. It's not rewarding good shots. And John Rahm said, I love it. I'd rather play these courses rather than the ones where it's a putting contest and it's 25 under. I'm on the side of Rom on this one. As a viewer, I enjoy watching guys have to make incredible shots and play in difficult conditions. That being said, the U.S. Open has had some completely ridiculous setups over the years. I don't want that. I don't want the greens where they're putting on a sidewalk. But I don't know. You have played in, you've obviously played at a really high level. What are your thoughts as a player and as a viewer? What do you like playing and what do you like watching? And who do you think is more accurate in their statements?
Well, listen, Rom said for a long time now that he likes the difficult courses because that's his strength is tee to green. And, on a course where everybody can get there and just it's a birdie fest, he's not always going to be the top. But the tougher the conditions get and the tougher the course is where the best players in the world are truly going to shine because you can't fake anything, right? So, there's no making up for mistakes like there is in a much easier course. So, as a viewer, I agree with you. I like the courses that are set up like this. I like the winning scores around 10 under par. It doesn't need to be a U.S. Open where it's even par or 3 over. Those are fun. And I don't hate the easier tournaments too. I think they have their place. It's a good combination to have some tournaments that play easier, some play that play harder. As a player, I will say it's hard to play week in and week out on very difficult setups. It really is because it's a grind and it takes a lot out of you. So that's why, these guys aren't playing every week anyway, so it doesn't truly matter. But, some of the guys that are, the guys that are battling for their cards every year have to play a lot of events, and playing in that kind of conditions week in and week out can be very difficult. So I like the blend of the tour where you get some difficult events, you get some easier events, and the guys can pick and choose, what they want and where their talents are. So, of course, most viewers are going to be like, "Oh, I like the U.S. Open. I like to see them struggle out there." And while there's some merit to that, I think it's not what you want to see week in and week out. It's just too difficult, and it makes I don't know. I think it sets a precedent of like golf courses to set up their course so difficult. You remember, most people when they're playing golf, they need an easy course. Everybody wants to make birdies. I know I enjoy making birdies when I'm out there. I don't want to go out shoot there every day and make double bogey on every single hole. I want to go out, make a few birdies, some pars, have a good time because that'll keep me coming back. So, but as a viewer, I like it where it's really what the last couple of weeks have been. The Honda was pretty solid. The Hill is good. And this week, I'm sure will be very, very similar. So only the best will win in these type of conditions. All right, before we end the show, let's one more mention of this week's promo code. We have Players20. Take $20 off Andy or myself's tournament pack for this week. Normally priced at $39. Grab it for just $19. All 4 days of coverage. Definitely good value there. So head over to WagerTalk.com to either one of our pages to check that out. Andy, on behalf of Andy and myself, we will see you guys back here again next week. I actually forget, what is next week's tournament, Andy? Where are we going next week?
I don't know. I've been so focused on the players and so excited for 17 and this week. I haven't even looked because they're probably going to all take off next week anyway. So we're going to probably have a birdie fest, where Vincent Whaley's going to wrap up his tour card when he wins or something.
Very, very high probability. And we are at Innisbrook. Decent course, though, for the Valspar Championship. So we will see you guys next week. Yeah, we will see you next week for the Paint Championship of Valspar. Thanks, guys, and good luck with your bets.